I'm Stephen Trosi. I'm professional services manager at Globus. I've only been at Globus for a little over a year. Kind of a noob when it comes to time at Globus. There's a lot of very seasoned people who work for Globus. What is Globus? To start with, Globus is a nonprofit service developed and operated by the University of Chicago. With Globus, it makes it pretty easy to move, share, and discover data. That's usually over a single interface, a web app that Globus has. It also makes it easier for developers to use Globus to build applications and gateways, leveraging our identity management, single sign-on authentication, and transfer and automate services that we're going to be going through today. So what is our mission? Our mission is to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of researchers engaged in data-driven science and scholarship through sustainable software. Kind of boils down to Globus makes it very easy to work with data, specifically big data, large amounts of data. We're talking petabytes of data. It also ensures security and reliability while working with that data. So a little bit about what Globus is. This is a slide we like to throw in our presentations that just shows some usage statistics with Globus. So right now we have 415,000 registered users and apps, users in 80 plus countries. We're transferring almost 2 petabytes of data per day, 54,000 active endpoints. And you can kind of read the rest yourself there. It goes to show that we have a influence across the globe with all kinds of data. So yeah. In addition, the modular apps we're sort of talking about is the identity management, the auth. We have really well documented developer APIs, and that workflow automation is kind of what we're going to be talking about as it relates to file transfer. Maybe a little bit of access control and file sharing in there, but mostly automation and transfer. So what do we mean by automation? Well, automation can be a couple of different things, but mostly we're talking about we have data somewhere that we need to move somewhere else. And maybe we need to do that on a recurring basis. New data is available, let's say every day, every week, every month on a certain date or time. And we need to do stuff with that data, whether it's just transfer it from one place to another, or maybe do some compute on that data as well. We can do that through Globus as well. So I'm going to be kind of going through a couple different ways of automation today. I guess we could say mostly like it would be easiest to hardest. So we're going to start with the easiest ways of automating down towards a little more custom, what we call flows, which I think would be the most difficult to do. And that's not difficult. It's in these 3 scenarios, it's the most difficult. Some use cases, I kind of just talked about this. So simple automation use cases, we can use it as data backup, as user, as a system. We can stage data in and out as part of a compute job. Maybe you have an instrument somewhere that is spitting out data and you need to move that somewhere else. And that instrument is running, every day at a certain time. We can use data portals and gateways that submit a transfer of compute results. So yes, there's any number of ways that we can automate things and lots of different use cases for automation. Okay, so here's where we sort of get into these 3 scenarios that I was talking about, Globus automation capabilities. Going from easiest to, let's say, hardest, the Globus web app is definitely, I think, the easiest to schedule recurring transfers, also known as a Globus cron job. So we're going to kind of take a look at the web app first. I'm going to click over to my web app here. The app is available at this URL, app.globus.org. And it will bring you to, we're going to click on the file manager here first. Now, keep in mind that when we're searching these collections, these were all set up with the Globus Connect server. So you need to have a Globus Connect server installed on your endpoint in order for it to show up within the interface. I'm going to use a couple different test scenarios here. I have a guest collection that I want to transfer data from. And then I have, let's say, a tutorial endpoint here. These are just two generic collections that I'm using. You would, substitute in your production collections here. So if I look at a directory here, it's just a couple of files in this directory. Again, this could be much larger files than 4 bytes or 3.76 kilobytes. Let's go up a folder here. We're going to choose that folder. And we're just going to transfer it over to the home folder in the tutorial endpoint. Now, it's easy enough just to click this and have it transfer. What if we want to do this on a recurring basis? This is where I would click on the transfer and timer options here. You can give it a label. A couple different options here. If you only want to sync, transfer, or change files, you can do that if the checksum is different, if the file doesn't exist, if the file size is different, or if the modification time is newer. Either one of these is fine. Checksum, I'm going to check if a file does not exist on the destination. I don't want to delete the files. We can preserve the source file modification times. It just keeps the times of modification for the files. It doesn't try to attempt to change those. We can encrypt the transfer, skip files and source with errors, and fail on quota errors. Here's where we would schedule it. We can click on the little calendar icon here. And let's say we want to schedule that for today at 2:10, not AM, PM. And we can say that maybe we want to repeat this, every day. And we can keep it going forever if we want, and come in here and cancel it by hand. Or we can say it ends after a date or by a date. So let's give that. And we're going to go ahead and actually, let's make that 2:10. And we'll go ahead and start. So we just submitted a timer request. We can view the details of that request here. It hasn't executed yet. And we can look at the logs of this timer. I'm going to give this a minute. It hasn't clicked over to 2:10 quite yet. In the meantime, if I go back here and let's say refresh, not quite yet. And it should be running now. Let's go back to that activity. Hasn't executed yet. I'm going to come back to this actually. So let's go back. So that's the web interface, the web app way of creating timers and scheduling transfers through the web app. Let's refresh it one more time here, just in case. We'll come back. The next way of creating transfers is through the Globus command line interface. This is available under here. Let's go over here. If we go to docs.globus.org/CLI, this is going to give you instructions about how to install it. Typically, these things are installed through pip. It's a PyPy module. So we're installing this through pip. And what we're really going to try to reference here is this Globus timer. So if I click on Globus timer, actually, excuse me, it's down here. That's the wrong one. It's the API timer. This is the one I want. So this is kind of similar to, it is very similar actually to the web app, to the interface. The options to send to the transfer are very similar. Or do we do a sync level? That was the checksum, or do we check the size? Is it recursive? If it's a directory, then it's going to be recursive. Do we encrypt the data? Do we want to notify on any of these on, off, succeeded, failed, or inactive? When do we want to start it? So that would be the year, month, and day and time. At what interval do we want to run it at? So could be 1 day, 10 days, just like we did within the web interface. Give it a name or a label, a stop after date or a stop after run. And that's kind of basically all we need to send this Globus timer create transfer. If you look at an example here, let me pull it over. So this is doing almost exactly the same thing that I just did within the web interface. I am transferring from that one endpoint to the other. I'm starting it at a certain time, giving an interval, making sure that it's recursive because this is a directory, and giving it a name and a label. So if you're more comfortable or are comfortable with being in a command line, this is a fairly simple way of creating a timer and a way to transfer using a timer. I'm not going to run this because we already ran that other transfer. This will basically do the same thing. You can go into the web app once you run this. Let's see if this is here. It's not there yet. Oh no. Let's check the activity again. It has not executed yet. Okay. Let me come back to that and double check. This should be running. Maybe these times are off. But let me come back to that. So again, we went through the web app timer, the Globus command line interface. And I think this is more, again, I kind of come back to saying the more difficult, but it's not super, because all these flows are available. Most flows are available within the web app. If you want custom flows, then you have to define your own. But there are a few canned flows that I think would do the trick of transferring stuff from one endpoint to another. So let's just talk a little bit about what flows are. How am I doing on time? 15 minutes. Okay. Manage automation of tasks. So flows are a platform service for defining, applying, and sharing distributed research automation flows. They're comprised of actions, and you can have any number of actions you want inside a flow. Globus provides some action providers, specifically transfer, authentication, and search ingest. There's a few others, but you can provide your own custom action providers if you want. So let's move past that. Flows are built on top of an AWS service called step functions. So we utilize AWS in the background for these flows. You define flows using a declarative language, which is either JSON or YAML. You deploy those flows to the Globus Flows service, and you can even set access policies for visibility and execution. So they are step functions. So they go, from action 1, action 2, action 3, action 4, and so on. You can have choices within these flows to kick off a certain action or another. So they're pretty robust, and you can customize them how you want. So we have, like I said, a couple of Globus provided flows. One such is called a two-stage Globus transfer, and that's the one we're going to take a look at first. And then there's another one that's move, copy, and delete files using Globus. So we find these flows back in the web app here, and you go to library. And by the way, this is where if you created any custom flows, this is where you'll see them as well. And you can even click on administered by me or runnable by me to filter down to the ones that you can edit and the ones that you can run. I'm going to do the two-stage. So if we look at the definition, this is how flows are defined. I'm not going to go through all of these steps. But this is a sort of declarative, almost JSON style file that we're using to create the definition for this flow. And here you can see, I'm just going down to look the actual transfer portion of this to give you an idea of what. That's the transfer input. And transfer should happen towards the end. Here. here, notice the action URL. This is a Globus provided action URL, the transfer. So that's going to be the bulk of what this flow is doing. We also have the idea of an input schema. Again, I won't go through this. Right here, we only have a Globus collection to choose from, an intermediate collection to choose from, and a destination. So if I go back to my overview and I look at starting this run, this is the input here for the source Globus collection. And I can say, oh, I know what it was. We can browse that. And here's that directory. We select it. We can go to tutorial endpoint 1. And we want to send it to the home path. And then the ultimate destination, let's say, is tutorial endpoint 2, again, on the home path. We can set a label for any one of these transfers or label the run itself. Let's select that. And then I start this run. Oh, maybe I need to give it a label here. Optional. Yeah, this one is required. Let's give it access. So we successfully started the run. If we view the run details here, hopefully we should see flow started and action started here. And it refreshes every few seconds to see what the what part of the flow it is in. Let's refresh this one more time. There we go. So here's all the action steps within this flow. Let's refresh again and see if we're almost done here. And the transfer actions have started. The first action completed. And if you want, the neat thing about this is I can check the details of any part of this flow. So if I click on view details here, it's going to give me information about this portion of the flow, about this leg of the flow. And it looks like it's all complete. So hopefully we can then go into our file manager. And this probably will still be empty. Let's check out tutorial endpoint 2. There it is. So that flow successfully moved over that directory to Globus tutorial endpoint 2. Now that I realize actually that I'm looking at tutorial endpoint 1, I believe it deletes it from that intermediate, the flow process transfers it from tutorial endpoint 1, then tutorial endpoint 2, and then after that goes back and deletes the intermediate resource. So that's why we're seeing it only at 2. So that's flows in a nutshell. Flows can also be run through the CLI and the Globus SDK. Globus has a Python SDK that flows can be kicked off from. So they don't have to be only run from the web interface. You can use the various tooling that Globus provides to run the flows as well. Yeah, so we can search and discover flows. We show that within the web interface just by clicking on the flows tab and then searching in the library. Not all will be runnable by you, only the more global ones that were created by Globus, and certainly ones that are created and administered by you will be able to run and update. Managing the flow execution. We saw this within that web interface. You provide inputs and run an instance of the flow. You can check the run progress and set access policies for monitoring and managing your flows. So fairly easy. Again, the web app really provides lots of different ways to transfer data and set up timers to transfer data on a recurring basis if you need to. It's all built in there. And not only that, you can see the progress of the transfers and the progress of the things that you're trying to transfer also within the web app under activities. Under activity here, that would be, again, here. So how do we automate these flows? You can start to manage runs via the web app or an API, the Globus Automate CLI and SDK. I encourage you to check this link out here, the Globus Automate client, to read the docs. It shows you different ways of running flows through automation. The web app, someone from Globus can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't believe that the web app provides a way to run a flow on a recurring basis. Oh no, these are listing the runs that I started. Let me click on this one more time just to double check. I don't believe we can. Yeah, but this flow that I just showed you can be automated through the Globus Automate client. This event-driven is not, it's in progress. So these are what we're calling triggers. A good example of an event-driven execution is when a file of a specific type has been created and maybe added to a file system. The trigger will recognize that and then run whatever flow process is needed, or after file has not been modified for defined periods. And maybe that's a delete trigger if it hasn't been modified for a defined period of time. So that's about it as far as I have for automation through the web app, through the CLI, and through flows. And flows would either be through the web app or through a CLI or SDK. I'm going to pause here. I'm about 25 minutes in, so a little bit ahead of the game. So we have some time for Q&A. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions you might have.
Great. Thanks, Steve. So yes, again, please put any questions in the chat or feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions for Steve.
I'll give it another 30 seconds or a minute in case anybody's forming a question. Well, if anybody's thinking of a question, I'll go to the last few slides here. These are just really handy links. The app.globus.org, that's the web app. Documentation is at docs.globus. And then connectors and subscriptions. The connectors are what you would set up on your data instance. So it could be like an EC2 instance, it could be whatever. The connectors range from POSIX, connecting a POSIX file system to Globus, as connect an S3 bucket to Globus to show up in the web app. Google Drive, I believe, is one. We have a number of different connectors, and there are certain features within Globus that are tied to subscriptions. So I think to get started, the free version of Globus is enough. If you find yourself needing more out of it, then subscriptions is the place to check. And if you have any questions or you need any help, support@globus.org is where you want to go, and email. A couple of upcoming events that might be of interest to folks in the audience. We have Globus World coming up this month, the end of this month in Chicago. And our Globus co-founder, who is part of Argonne National Laboratory and Globus, obviously, Ian Foster, and our executive director, Rachna, are both speaking. I've been to Globus World once in the past, and it's a wealth of information and a lot of helpful folks there if you have questions to answer anything that you might have. If somebody can't answer a question, we can find somebody who can. There's a lot of knowledgeable Globus people there.